My name is Lindsey Scharmyn. I'm a spiritual teacher, healer, guide, author, and more, an experiencer of all kinds of very interesting spiritual and paranormal experiences. So, this experience, I was probably 12 years old, I'm guessing, and I was asleep, and I didn't understand at the time what astral projection was or out of body experiences were or anything else. So when I would have experiences like this, to me, it was just a very, very strange, very immersive, vivid dream. That was my understanding of it. But I look back at these now and I understand that they're what they are. They're astral travel, they're out of body experiences, and that I experience them as just as you would experience waking life. Like it feels real like this. It's exactly like this. Whereas dreams are much more nebulous and shifting and strange and symbolic. And this was sort of more linear. And again, it's people say it and I'll say it because it's true. It feels realer than real, realer than reality. And so in this experience, I came to sort of floating in an infinite expanse of just blackness and darkness forever. And it was really nice. That sounds terrifying, perhaps, but it wasn't terrifying at all. It felt really beautiful. And I kind of didn't want to leave, to be honest. I think I wanted to stay there too, which is a recurring theme in a lot of these experiences. But I was floating in this infinite black expanse, and I was very curious. I'm always very curious in waking life and astral travel and all of the spaces. And I was just kind of floating around for a while, and I was wondering what this is. Where are we? Where am I? What's going on? And I just sort of see this pinpoint of light. It's very distant. It's very far away, and I just feel like I have to go there. Whatever that is, I have to go to that. And it's very exciting feeling. It's calling me. And so I go rushing towards it, and I'm rushing as fast as I can go, and I'm faster and faster, and I'm pushing and pushing and rushing to try to get to this place. And it's just barely getting any bigger. And I was like, this is really going to take a long time. And at the same time, at some point along this rushing towards the light, I become aware that something is noticing me and coming after me. And again, it doesn't feel scary. Whatever it is, I know isn't going to harm me, but I have a feeling that things will change once whatever it is finds me. Now I have an understanding that that was one of my guides, one of my spiritual guides or allies looking out for me and helping me. But I sort of had the energy of like a toddler who escapes the pen, right? I'm like going, seeing how far I can get. So I am getting closer and closer. This light is getting bigger and bigger. And I finally arrive at it. And it's finally big enough for me to see what it is. And this light is just a window. It's a perfect little, cute little, quaint little window. There was even flowers, I feel like, on the sill of this window. And I got to it and I just smashed up against it and I looked through, and on the other side is just this golden land of light. And everything there was infused with light. It was light. There was nothing that wasn't light, but there were hills and there was trees and there's a river, and it's beautiful and gorgeous. And it feels to me like abundance and probably pure love, but I don't know if at the time I even had the concept of what that would feel like, but such a beautiful, good feeling. And I just wanted to be on the other side of that window. And then my guide got me, found me, and was like, not yet, and kind of threw me back in my body. And I woke up, and again, to me, that was a really vivid, really amazing dream, but it captured me. I was drawing pictures of that window for a while. I was trying to talk to people about the window. And now I kind of know that window is like a boundary between these different stages or types of light that we can access. Some people call them, in fact, the clear light, the dark light and the light. And that was me in the dark light, finding the boundary between the dark light and the light. And so now I know, but at the time I didn't know. I just knew it was a very, very cool experience that left something in me that was like a motivation, drawing me further, trying to figure out like, what really was that? What's really going on here? This experience was shortly after the window experience. Again, astral travel that I didn't understand as such. So, from my point of view, I fell asleep about the age 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And I was just on a ship. I was on a ship and I was leaving Earth. And my experience of the ship is that it wasn't really even there. My experience at the time was that I was in a ship, but even then it was immaterial. The walls of it would come and go as I sort of needed them. If my attention was inside the ship, there would be a sort of wall there. And if I wanted to look outside of the ship at the solar system and the stars and space, there was nothing there. It was like a window. There was still, I could go up against it, but it was not really there. So I was with some beings and they weren't as clear at the time. I never at the time really knew who it was. I knew I had just implicit trust for them. I knew that I was safe. And I don't even have that with many humans, especially at that time. So there's something there of a relationship, obviously. And so I feel about them that they're my spiritual guides and allies. And now I seem to know who they are more. But at the time I wasn't. I was just in a ship with 3 beings who I trusted and loved and wasn't paying attention to who they were. That was not important in the experience. And I'm flying through the solar system, seeing Earth being left behind. I'm seeing Jupiter, I'm seeing Saturn, I'm seeing all of this. And you may imagine this was stunning. And again, very immersive, realer than reality. Nothing about it felt like anything but super clear experience. I could see it all so clearly. And I was in awe of all of it. And it was also very clear that the beings I was with thought that was sort of adorable. And they were doing some of this for my benefit. They were like, yeah, let's go slowly so she could see and soak all of this in. And I'm glad because I got to see so much. And at the time, there was no internet. And of course, everyone has seen some representations of space, but nothing like this, like the clarity and the dimensions and the colors and the light. And it was just sort of all consuming. So for a long time, I just felt like I was just at the wall of the ship looking out and being in awe of the universe and all of creation and seeing things that I would later see from the Hubble telescope imagery and, documentaries as star nurseries and nebula and galaxies and the spinning and the way they're disc-shaped but bulging in the middle and all of that. But I don't recall that being in my mind before this experience. So it's a little overwhelming, to be honest. You're just lost in it because it's so much and you don't know what to do with this or what, so it was very beautiful. It was very immersive. It was amazing. It was joyful. I was very excited. Again, I'm a very curious person and I'm a very excitable person. And I'm sort of like a child like that. I'm very excited to do new things. And this was definitely a new thing. So in the ship, we're now far past everything would even be possible for me to know about the universe, even though I didn't know any of it. And we're going out and it seems like we're going into emptiness at some point, There's nothing really there. Like the stars and the nebula and the galaxies are all kind of like becoming farther away. And at some point, my attention shifts and I see this massive light supercluster. If you can even call it that, if that could even come close to describing it. And it's just giant, beautiful amount of light. I even thinking about it, like I just want to dive into it. And I couldn't. I really was like pressed up against whatever the barrier was of this ship, staring at this beautiful light. I don't know how long. And my guides, my allies, kind of drew my attention eventually away from that, which is hard to look away from because it feels like home. And you don't know why. I didn't know why it felt like home. I just felt like I had to be there. I wanted to be there so badly. And I miss it. I think all of us feel that and we all miss it. And I just understood, I just knew this is heaven also. And it was physical. I mean, there's physical suns and physical earths, and there's the physical universe. And also this is a physical light, but that also this is our spiritual home. And I'm a very logical person. I was very logical at that time too. It didn't quite make sense to me, but I knew it in my heart that was true. I felt it. And I wasn't allowed to go into that light, or I wasn't able to, or that wasn't the purpose of what we were doing there. And again, my guides, my allies in this ship are doing this for my benefit. So they kind of let me soak it up, but it becomes almost heartbreaking to not be able to just go, especially when you can see it and you're right there and you just know that's home, that's heaven, and I want to go there, and you can't. So at some point they had to sort of peel me away, and they drew my attention down to this side of the universe that was coming out of that center of all things and all of the spinning clusters of everything. And they pointed almost to the very end of the hourglass shape, like very close to the bottom of the shape, just in the boonies. And they said, that's where you live. And that's where Earth is. And now we're going to go back there. And we did. And we did in just a moment. That whole ride out was a little bit slower. I got to see all of this. I got to experience it all. And then I got to take in the center of the universe and feel that call and that pull. And then when we were going home, we were just there. We never needed to go slow the whole time. That was just, again, for my benefit. It was just for fun. It was so beautiful. And going back was just instantaneous. When we get back to Earth, it looks to me like Earth. It's a globe of water and green and clouds and all of this. And then as we're getting closer, there's almost like an overlay is put over the globe, or I'm allowed to see this layer that is perhaps always there. And it looks to me like millions and billions of tiny tornadoes seen from the top down. So all I see is these little vortices, and they're smashed together side to side. There's nothing but those filling the entire globe. Spinning little portals. And I honestly, they look exactly like tornadoes to me. At first, I maybe thought like the whole world is covered in tornadoes right now. This is crazy. And my guides, my allies who had brought me on this trip said, those are actually all different timelines. They're different lives, is the way they phrased it. And they're different lives of yours. And I just kind of understood we have infinite possible lives that we're living in this body right here. As Lindsey Scharmyn, these are all the possible ways I could have lived this one life. It's not past lives, it's not future lives, it's this one life, and that's all the iterations of this life. And they said, you get to choose which one you go back to. And I'm like, that's crazy. How could I know which one to go back to? If there's that many of them, what would I pick? How would I pick just one? Am I going to look through all of them, watch the whole life? How would I know? And I said, do you know? And they were like, oh, we know. I was like, well, can you help me choose? And they're like, sure. What do you want? And I said, I want the life that is the best for me and for everyone else. And it was kind of like everyone else, like, yes, everyone else, not everyone else, my family, not everyone else, my friends, not everyone else, the people I knew in my town or my state, not everyone else in my country, everyone else in the world. And I felt a little sort of giggle or like nod of approval or like, isn't she adorable sort of energy and some pride maybe. But I was just very excited that was a possibility, that there was a life that was so good for me, but also everyone on the planet's best life. And they were like, yeah, that's that one. And they pointed to one, kind of like highlighted a little bit. And I just dove. I didn't even hesitate. I was like, that's the one they told me. So I just dove into it. And then I was here, but I was here in a different way than I ever remember being here before, because I was not in a body, but I was in this reality again, or rather just on Earth again. And it was a similar feeling to being on the ship, but here we have all of this stuff. It was all very familiar to me, but it wasn't that familiar because something was strange. I didn't understand what it was right away. And I was in a city, and it was a city I didn't recognize. And there were skyscrapers and buildings and things that it felt really positive. And I don't experience cities as positive most of the time. And I definitely didn't then. So that was strange. I was like, well, why is this city so nice? And it felt technologically advanced to me. It felt like everything was good, which is not how I experienced life at the time. So it was weird. And then I kind of floated up a little, and this taller building, this taller skyscraper, I was looking at it for some reason. And then I saw a person sitting in the window, some stories up, and looking out at the city. And I looked at that person, and it took me a minute, and I realized that that was me, but that I was old, really old. Remember, this is happening when I'm a teenager, but the person I'm looking at is 80, 90, but it's me when I'm 80 or 90. And I realized that. And then I then have like a memory, which doesn't really make sense, of also being that person. And I experienced for a moment being old me in that chair, looking out that window and seeing young me as like a disembodied spirit. And so I experienced that too. And I'm experiencing both things at once. And then I'm just being sort of sucked away. And my experience of this is that I'm being sucked through this new timeline back to the point at which I left my body and traveled to the center of the universe. And I'm rushing backwards through time, basically. And a big part of it is just a blur or a blank even. There's nothing there consciously. And then I start kind of noticing things again and being able to see or experience parts of what are happening. But what's really interesting is as I'm moving backwards through time, I also am seeing a timeline, literally. So I'm seeing the years go by. And as the years are going by, I'm seeing scenes out of my life, which I didn't really understand at the time. I'm just seeing, again, the years go by in reverse order from 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, back to when this is happening, circa 1996, let's say. And so each year I'm going back, I just see random things, and they're the least important things. None of them matter at all. Like they're just me standing by a fire with somebody who's doing something, and then me in a car driving, and, nothing important ever. There was nothing I could have changed or nothing I was supposed to remember or no important, nothing. Just random images, random scenes all the way back until I get back to 1990, whatever. And then as I'm doing this, I'm also physically getting closer to my home. So I'm going through my hometown and back to my mother's house at the time. And then I go back into my body and I wake up. And in my experience, that was just a crazy dream, like the craziest, wildest dream that nobody would even believe really, but that I was going to tell people. And it was just a dream to them too. And it remained a dream for a little while, but it actually wasn't that long, because within a few days, again, it was sort of like the window, right? Where I was drawing it and I was kind of obsessed with it for a minute, and I was trying to talk to people about it and I wanted to understand it more. This was even more like that. And I wanted to understand, like, well, what is the universe and what is space and what are stars and what is all this stuff I saw in this crazy dream? And I went to the library and I rented a VHS tape of a Nova episode. And this Nova episode was about space. And at some point in the video, I was seeing the things that I had seen in the dream that I had never seen before, until I was seeing it on this video right now. And it was just confirming for me. And as I'm watching it, I realized that wasn't a dream. Like that felt so real because it was real. And everything I saw is actually exactly what the universe looks like. And even the center of all things and that hourglass shape, which was not in the movie, I knew that is actually what it looks like. That is the center of all things. That is what the universe looks like. And when I had this thought and this realization as I was watching this movie, I kind of asked, who am I asking? I don't know, I guess God, right? I'm like, is this actually real? Did that actually happen? This is actually what it looks like? And right as I'm sort of asking that and having this realization, there was this little explosion. And it was like maybe a foot, 6 inches from me, just right in front of my eyes, right in my visual focal point. And it just exploded. It was just like a mini firework, like an electric static shock just exploded right in front of me, as though to confirm that yes, it was. But also, I was a teenager, and that was terrifying to me that some little explosion seemed to be responding to my thoughts after I was taken to the center of the universe in what wasn't a dream. So I got really scared, actually, and I ran to my bed and I got under the covers and where all things are safe. And I thought really hard about life and what it was and what reality is. And I didn't really have answers for any of those questions. And as scary as that is, and as overwhelming as that is, and as a lot of these types of experiences can be, because melding them back in, integrating them with this reality and the way people are with each other and going to work or going to school it's crazy. They don't seem to merge very well. And it's very difficult, but as scary as that can be, having seen the center of the universe and felt that feeling of home and of light and of love and of heaven, I now call it and know it as, that made it better. It made it easier. It made it, even though I would go into the fear sometimes, I always came back to that, knowing that there's something beautiful and infinite out there, and we're all a part of it. So decades go by between going to the center of the universe and now somewhat recently, a handful of years ago, I am asking my guides and allies who I've had many, many, many conversations with at this point. I do channeled work. I do spiritual work now. My whole life has transformed and I'm really in my path. And I'm asking them, like, can I go back to the center of the universe? I mean, we did it once, right? It must not be that hard. Can we do it again? And I just always get this answer. And psychics have told me this, and all sorts of spiritual workers have told me this. They're like, you're grounded. And I'm like, why am I grounded? That sounds like a punishment. What did I do wrong? Am I not on my path? Am I not loving enough? Am I not forgiving enough? And they're always like, no, it's not that. It's not a punishment. You're just grounded. Like you're here now in this place. And it feels kind of unfair to me, and it maybe shouldn't. Maybe I'm greedy. I know a lot of people would wish to have even one experience like this, and I'm aware of that. So I'm also aware that maybe I'm asking too much. But I just sort of say, okay, well, can you just give me a glimpse again? Like I just want to see it again, or just no, I just want to be close to it again. Can you help me out? And their response came in a series of 3, let's say, vignettes, sort of downloaded into my consciousness. And I'm receiving this message. And each of the vignettes is some sort of image of me doing something really beautiful for someone, or really, really kind for someone, or just a really loving sort of experience. And they were all cool, great messages and images to receive. And at the end, I was kind of like, well, that wasn't the center of all things. And they're kind of cheeky. And they're like, wasn't it the center of all things? And I just felt it in my heart. And it's the same feeling I felt when I saw the center of the universe. And I realized what they were saying was, that is the center of the universe is every time we've loved someone or loved ourselves or given someone something or been kind or been compassionate or been in our highest self, every time we felt that feeling that we've all felt, which is our heart expanding, it's our love flowing, it's that feeling that is the center of the universe. And I saw it, and they gave me that additional sort of view that this is the center of the universe. It is literally here. It's not a nice little metaphor, right, for us to imagine. They were like, this is the center of the universe. It is the center of all things. And I saw it. I saw every single person is this light walking around the center of their body, and the center of their energetic structure, and the center of their chakra system is the heart. It's the heart center. And that's the center. And so I was thinking, well, it's the center of the universe, but it's the center of all things in the sense that all of the things we can see physically lead towards that center of the universe, but it's also literally the center of all things, as in every single thing has a center that is quantumly entangled with that center, and it's all one place. They're not separate or different, actually. Only in our view and our limited experience are these things seemingly not connected or distant or separate from each other, but in actual reality, they are literally the center. When I go into my heart, I'm at the center of the universe, and I'm at the center of your heart. And when you go into yours, you're at the center of mine. And we're all in the same place at the same time, with the same love, at the same center, and it's not different. And so they were absolutely right. They did take me back to the center of all things, but it was actually maybe even better because now I know I carry it around with me, and I can find it everywhere I go, in everything I do, and everyone I meet. Heaven is also this thing. When I was out in the ship looking at it, it felt to me like a physical place. And it felt to me like I wanted to, like I said, dive into it and just be there. And that I would be there, and that was this location. And it was different from where Earth was, where I live, down where we all live, down at the end of the hourglass. It was separate from it, right? But when I learned this, when I understood this, that we actually carry it within us, and that this is literally the center of the universe right here in my heart, and I also understood that was heaven, but this is heaven. And they're not different. And actually, it is overwhelming to think about that if you want to be in heaven, you can just be there anytime. Anytime you can feel love in your heart, you are in heaven, and you're creating heaven around you. And you can share it with anyone as well. And I feel it even right now. All of the people I know who have passed on and who are gone, they're standing right here with me because I'm feeling it. When I go into that space and when I invite others into that space, that's what I'm actually doing, is I'm triggering in them the feeling of love, because the feeling of love is the portal through which all of it flows. And it can change reality, and it can change your experience, and it can change your level of consciousness. And when people talk about high vibing, like, this is what they're talking about, is feeling love and being love. And you can't fake it. You either feel it or you're not feeling it at the moment. And it's okay. It doesn't matter. You're always going to still carry heaven with you, and you're always going to be able to access it. That is literally heaven. Where did those people go when they dropped their bodies? They're right here, right now. They're all around us, and there's no disconnection. There's no separation. When you feel love for them, you just understand it more clearly. They weren't there when you weren't conscious of the love, right? Or they weren't not there when you weren't conscious of the love. They were still there. You just fall into it, and you just reconnect with it and feel it. And what a beautiful gift that we all get to be, without trying, without asking for it, without becoming better people or perfected beings, that we are still carrying around heaven and the light, and standing within that is a choice we get to make anytime we want to. Love is not something that can be easily described. It's sort of like that old adage, like the Tao that can be known is not the Tao. And love might be sort of similar to that. And so it is complicated actually, but it's actually not complicated, because what love really is at its base, at its core, is the absolute release and allowance of anything to be exactly what it is in that moment, and the appreciation of it, right? It's no control. There's no judgment in it. You can't look at something and say, well, I wish it was like this. Like, that's not really love then. Love is the ability to look at something and exactly as it is in that moment, say, how perfect you are. How perfect you are, exactly like that. And that is so foreign for us. We spend almost all of our lives doing the opposite. We're like, perfect this and change that and modify this and change me, and I'm not good enough and they're not good enough and nothing is really ever good enough. And there's something good in that. That's okay. But it's not the same as the ability to just sit and say, I right now am perfect, exactly as I am, every single bit of it, everything I've ever done, all the things I think are mistakes, all the things that I wish I didn't do, all the regrets I have, perfect, perfect. That's difficult. It's hard for us. We're very seemingly disconnected from love. And in this life, I feel like our main purpose is to remember what love actually is and then let it in. Like, let yourself receive the knowingness that you are perfect and always have been exactly what you are and who you are and where you are and when you are and what you're doing and what you're thinking and what you're being is perfect. And then just let that feel good for a second. That is what God would love the most for you to do right now. In a recent experience, which has tied together all of the experiences of my whole life, I mean, very literally has tied together every moment of my life and brought it into distinct presence of oneness. It was a oneness experience, and I was in a very profound ceremonial setting. And at some point in this experience, I opened my eyes, my physical eyes, and I looked and I saw the sky and the clouds, and there's pine trees above me, kind of in the breeze. And there were birds that had come to sit in the trees around me, and they were all calling, and there was beautiful scents, and there was a few people in my peripheral vision. And how it looked was literally like one being called God came through all of that at once. And all of it was perfectly timed. Every pine needle had to move in just this way. Each person who was there had to accidentally say or move in whatever way they were saying and moving things. And it wasn't what any one of those things did that mattered. It was that they all did it perfectly in the right time, in the right order, for literally God to come through and talk to me. And I said, how could it be this perfect? How could all of this orchestrate itself to show up right here, right now, and move in just this way and know what to do or what to say or how to move or how to make a little peep sound from the bush right then so that I can hear you talking to me as God through all this? How is that even possible? And God said, because they're all God too, and so are you. And even that message from God telling me that I'm God and that you're God and that everything is God, like it can't be an accident. You can't actually do anything wrong. You are one with God all the time. And God is coming through you all the time. And it changes everything, because you can't look at anything ever again and say, that's wrong, or that shouldn't be that way, or it should be like this. You can only look at it and go, that's God. That's God doing God, and it's perfect. And God is always coming through it. all of the time. And none of it had to try. None of the pine trees had to think about, where do I grow today, or how do I place this needle? None of the birds had to wonder, where should I land, or how should I sing? And none of the people had to wonder, like, should I move now or not, or should I say this or not? All of it just is one ongoing wave of perfection. You're just in it. And the more you release the fear or the resistance to it, the more it will come through you easily and naturally. And what we are looking at as God or as love or as the thing that we want is actually that. It's that feeling of just being one with the flow of the universe and of love and of consciousness and of God. That's what we really want. And everything else is our resistance to it, or our misunderstanding of it, or our wondering if we're doing it right, or our feeling like it should be different or better, or and again, the more we just release and say, this is exactly perfect, exactly how it is. Even the things I think I don't like are perfect, and they're here for a reason, and there's something about them that I need right now, or that is serving me perfectly in ways I couldn't possibly understand, because I don't always exist at that level of God that can look down and come through literally every molecule at once to talk to a person. I don't always exist at that level of oneness. So down here, when I'm a little bit further away from it, out of ceremony and in normal life, again, I have to accept that there is a grand plan and design and wave and motion that I couldn't possibly conceive of most of the time. And to just let go of everything else, it allows so much more love, vibrancy, thriving, just beautiful ease of living to do that. And things just fall into place and work out perfectly, and synchronicities start happening and messages start flowing. And really, it's just healing. You're just letting go of all the stuff that wasn't in alignment with that oneness. And you move a little bit closer the more you just let go and trust. And surrender is really the word that I think is most important. When we just surrender to that flow and we really, really let go, it's a radical letting go, then we can be more and more closer to that oneness state, and maybe eventually actually achieve it here and now in this time and place. It can be done. We have to let go. I knew it was God because it was overwhelming in ways I can't even describe. I've never felt anything like it in my entire life. The closest I've come to it are the feelings of pure love that I've had, the moments of really high level spiritual experiences are a little bit similar. Moments of feeling completely and utterly safe, which are rare, right? And all of that wrapped up into one. But as well, there's something in you that just recognizes, like, I know you better than anything, right? Like, there's something more than familiar about this experience. And again, the power of it feels like you're physically going to disintegrate in that presence, in that feeling of oneness. And I mean, I think you do when you go into that feeling of oneness. And so maybe that's part of it too. So you just for a second kind of re-merge with it. And how could you not know? Because you are it for that second. So that merging and that really feeling of oneness allows you to know what God really is. And so you know it's God. There's no doubt in my mind that it was God. That's all that could be. Everywhere, at all times, all space, in all things, and every atom and every person and every layer of being and consciousness. What else would we call that but God? This wasn't my first experience of meeting God, but it was the most deeply profound, life-changing, earth-shattering experience for sure. But each time was a little different. And the first time I met God was via some astral travel sort of situation. And I saw him at a table of plenty as just a large, laughing, joyful, mirthful being, and all the food you could ever want in front of him. And I actually asked him, I did not recognize him as God. I just said, well, who are you? And he said, well, I'm God. And I and I actually thought it was hilarious, and it was really fun and cool. And and that was that experience. And the next time I met God, it was also in an astral out of body sort of experience. And this time I was just floating, the best feeling, just weightlessness, floating in a cloud of light. I call it the nebulous love cloud of light. And I got to be held by God in that experience. And I was me and God was God. And God was holding me like a little baby and sort of rocking me. And I got to ask him all these questions. And it was very joyful for me. And I knew it was God because it looked like my conception of God, right? The white guy with the beard, which is like not what God is, but it was my projected image of what God should look like. And then also as this nebulous love cloud, somehow both at once. And that was a really beautiful experience as well, and very different from the first one. And then this one, this oneness experience where God came through everything at once to talk to me, again, sort of dissolving everything about me into nothingness and merging with that understanding and that level of consciousness, I was shown and experienced that this is God coming through and talking to me, but actually this is me. Everything, everywhere, all the time is God, and God comes through all of it to talk to me. Then I am also God, and I experience myself in that moment of oneness as God. So I receive as much of God as I can in each of those. The first time was the way it was because that's all I could handle. I couldn't handle receiving more love than that. And the second time was years enough later that I was healed enough and present enough that I could receive being held by God. And this time I'm healed and well enough and present enough that I could receive the amount of love that can show you that you are God. And that's where I was. That's what I was able to receive. And that is what God is. Not only am I God, but you are God. Everybody is God. Everything is God. And God wants me to tell you that. And I would love to tell everyone. I would love to walk up to everyone and tap them on the heart and just explode it in love and knowingness that they are also God. Well, I'm not really allowed to do that. So hopefully you can receive this understanding and this feeling and this knowing that you are God, being God right here, right now, exactly as you are.